The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Well, good evening, everybody. This is, oh, Al, I hear my echo coming through on your computer. Good evening, everybody. This is Randy Pittman, National Board of Director. I'm going to be presenting the AYSO Volunteer Membership Program with my new buddy, Al Prado, who's at the AYSO office. He's the program manager. Say hello, Al.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining. Thanks for giving up your time for this and the program and everything you do. Hopefully this next hour will be informative, and forgive the dog in the background if you can hear that.
So Al and I have been presenting this, the slides we're about to show you here for quite some time. Questions that are going to come in. Al has the technical side. He knows how all of this works. There's a lot of systems that support one another, and so technical questions that you may have, he'll be answering, and then process procedural questions I'll take care of. Generally speaking, most questions should be answered by the slide deck. And if they're not, what we encourage you to do is go to the questions box and type in any questions that you may have. And at the end of the presentation, we're going to have the question and answer period. Al will read off the questions and the two of us will answer as appropriate. And I guess the only other thing to explain is that some of these screenshots that you're going to see, because what we're going to show you is some of the process screens that the users, being the volunteers, including yourselves, will be experiencing. And not all of these screens are current. So in previous webinars, we've had some people going ahead of us and logging in the Blue Sombrero and saying, hey, how come I don't have that option? And that's because the screenshots you're seeing are not live yet. What we're expecting is the volunteer membership program to go live April 3rd. That's the launch date, if you will. So after at April 3rd, some of the screenshots that you'll see, that's when they will be active, and you'll see them as we're presenting. So we'll jump right in and give you a little bit of background. As you know, AYSO has been around since 1964, and so we've got well over 50 years of innovation for products and services within youth soccer world to answer to the communities that we serve. And beginning with Everyone Plays, we've been innovative almost every step of the way. And that's one of the reasons why I think many of us are still involved with AYSO so passionately, because we understand that there's so many things that AYSO does that is, if not cutting edge, it's leading in the industry. And things, programs like Safe Haven, you see that it's got a trademark, type of program. And it was in response to the protection programs and regulations that were coming out by the government. And that spawned things like Kid Zone and other programs that keep our membership safe in the current world that we exist in, if you will, through the generations of the decades AYSO has been promoting all these programs. And of course, we're familiar with our other programs like VIP and AYSO United and Playground and all these different things. And so really just setting the platform here that AYSO is an innovator in the industry that we are servicing. And today we're going to talk about the latest endeavor, which is the Volunteer Membership Program, also known as VMP. With AYSO, as you know, we like our acronyms. So want to introduce this acronym to all of you, because in some of the literature or maybe in correspondence that you might have with some people, they're going to use VMP instead of Volunteer Membership Program. So we'll just tie the two together. Considering, again, where AYSO is always looking out across its membership to see how we can be safer, we've understood that it's our collective best interest to have programs in place to give um, the sense of a safe working environment, not just for our players, but also for all of us as volunteers, to protect ourselves. When our loved ones are volunteering with others, we want to make sure that they're in a safe environment with other adults. Sometimes things can go pretty volatile, and those are very unfortunate circumstances. And if we can find and screen out people who have a certain volatility in their background that would be incompatible to the environment that we want to volunteer within, we want to have the ability to screen them out ahead of time, as well as those that are in financial responsibilities, whether chosen or maybe they seek those financial positions like a treasurer or maybe even a snack shack or somewhere where they're collecting money, and maybe they've got some issues with money in their background, and we want to be able to spot those people before we welcome them into our program as well. So when we consider the screening portion of the volunteer membership program, it's kind of it's not just about protecting our players, although that's vitally important, and we've got all the programs in place to do that. We're adding these other components of awareness to really explain that all of us as a membership deserve to volunteer within a safe, fair, and fun organization that AYSO presents. So back in late 2017, the National Board of Directors was really kind of confronted with the realities of the modern marketplace. Some of us are aware of the gymnastics, the girls and women's gymnastics has happened recently. U.S. Youth was last year, but it's a fake confronted with a lawsuit of $8.2 million. And there was a court precedent that was established with that particular case, and that got a lot of awareness by a lot of youth organizations like ours, because that precedent is there now, and we had to look inward at our screening practices and determine what we're going to do. So that's kind of what stimulated that 2017 vote by the National Board of Directors to elevate our background screening to level 2. There were other circumstances as well, those being lawsuits that AYSO was currently involved with, as well as, again, other organizations that are facing the realities of the modern age, where people are trying to do some harmful things to members. Again, not just children. You've got caretaking positions where you hear that elderly are being abused, and in nursing homes and other types of scenarios like that. And unfortunately, it's a reality that's faced. So again, lots of organizations like AYSO are looking at how do we protect our organization, and what levels of protection do we need, and how do we screen for that? So one of the things that's important to know is that not one particular screening fits all organizations due to our unique needs. And so AYSO had to kind of figure out what is a level 2 background screening look like, and what types of components is necessary. So the reason why I bring that up is a lot of times we get asked is, hey, I've been screened by, with the organization that I'm with. I'm a teacher, I'm a police officer. There's all kinds of people that go through screenings in their professional lives. And the reality is that while that may suit the purpose for their job, it may not necessarily fit the purpose that AYSO is trying to use to protect its interests. And so around this time in last year, we established a communication plan to communicate to the membership that we're endeavoring on this level 2 screening, and we're going to change how volunteers enter our organization, and we're also going to change how we provide services to our volunteers. And that's kind of what gave birth to the volunteer membership program. Whoa, that was quick. There we go. Sorry about that. Hit the wheel on my mouse. So we endeavored on that communication plan that went all the way up through the annual general meeting. We took lots of questions by all of the executive members, that being those section directors, area directors, and regional commissioners. And we really tried to get the word out that, hey, for membership 2019, which is what we're coming upon now, this is going to launch. It's going to go live. Please have everyone prepare and get ready financially for some of the impacts this is going to impose upon the regions. So we also had to establish some goals and objectives for the background check so that we could understand, one, is this program achieving what we set out to do? And two, how can we improve upon the program as we move forward? This is our first take. It's our first year. So we want to roll this out with as much minimal disruption as possible, but also ensuring that we hit the objectives that we've put forward. And so some of those objectives are addressing the rising insurance rates. As I stated, we've had litigation that AYSO has been involved with, and in general, insurance rates go up, according to different risks within the market. And so this is a way for us to signal to the stakeholders within the insurance community that we're doing our due diligence to minimize their risk exposure as they protect us with their insurance. And in so doing, we are seeking to keep our rates as low as possible to keep our player fees down. We're also trying to mitigate the overall risk in litigation that we're exposed to by being a public service provider. So as I explained, some of that mitigation is, ahead of time, promoting the screening process to discourage people who may have a checkered past and frankly are going to look for another organization to go prey upon because they don't want to be exposed for who and what they are. And then from the litigation aspects, again, it's really vitally important that AYSO demonstrates that a due diligence to approach risks that can be solved. And some of that is in response to that precedent that was set with the case against US Youth Soccer. And of course, as I said earlier, we want to reduce the risks to all of you. As members within this organization, we want to have a safe working environment as we're volunteering to protect our kids. So we rely on one another, and all of these different aspects of protection, if you will, is what is really one of the things that makes AYSO such a beacon, if you will, for people to come and want to volunteer for, because they know they're part of an organization that takes keeping kids safe as a priority, and really, frankly, do the things to ensure that that's there. These aren't just words that we speak. They're in our mission, and we really are fulfilling that mission. And within that mission, it is to keep programs, to develop them and ensure a safe, fair, and fun environment. So those are the goals that we established, and we realized that the level 2 background screening was one of the things that we had to incorporate into this in order to achieve that. So what exactly is a level 2 background check? It's in part, these are the main bullet points of the databases, essentially the puzzle pieces, if you will, of data that all come together to create a picture profile for the types of volunteers that come into our organization. And these are the databases that we can get the most information based on that type of a volunteer. What's new specifically is, as you can see, this current county resident search. Unfortunately, we don't have one national database that is a true database that stays current. What happens is all the different databases that are out there that federal law enforcement and state law enforcement use all come from county. Well, not all of them, but a good amount of the information comes from the county court systems. And so the true records really exist at the county level. And until the county sends the information up into the other databases, those other databases are blind to anything that's active. And unfortunately, a lot of our county court systems are low staffed, not funded very well, and in many cases still don't even have electronic means of uploading. It's all done through the paper shuffle, and depending on where you are in the country. And when you consider how, one, that we're a national program, and that we live in a very mobile society now. People are moving from state to state and bringing their kids all over the place. And when they see if they're an AYSO volunteer, they know they can go to another place and look for an AYSO program. And we want to make that experience for them as seamless as possible. But at the same time, we want to make sure that as these people are moving around the country, they're not necessarily running away from something. And so keeping this current county registry is going to be very important, because what we're doing is we're establishing an initial background check. Then we're going through a monthly monitoring system. And part of that monthly monitoring system is actively going through thousands upon thousands of county records and trying to ensure that all of our volunteers essentially have an active status. And what that means is you might be able to pass the background check today, and then maybe something's going to happen, even say a month from now. And this level 2 screening is going to pick that up, and it's going to report it back to AYSO, which will make it down to your region, so that in almost, I'm not going to say real time, but in very short amount of time, we're going to be able to find people who may not be compatible, even though they've passed the initial screening. So this is a really big and important step in the level of protection that AYSO is innovating and leading the industry with. And we are seeing other organizations moving in this direction. So we know it's not going to be long before others see what we're either see what we're doing and copy, or are compelled through some of the lawsuits or other unfortunate events that may happen to them before they realize they have to go in this direction as well. So how does this all happen? Well, what I'm going to show you over the next few slides are the actual screenshot processes that all of us will go through as volunteers, and what your volunteers themselves will be going through. And the good news is that it's going to be a lot more efficient and a little bit easier and a little bit shorter to go through the process itself. It begins in Blue Sombrero, as it always has, and Al Prado has endeavored to make the Blue Sombrero experience easier by keeping only the fields that are necessary. And what I mean by that is there are certain fields that like shirt sizes and things like that maybe they're useful if you buy shirts for your volunteers, but they're not usefulness. They're not essential to the actual background check or volunteering at all. So what he's done is he's creating a lot of these fields that were just mandatory go-through fields, if you will, that made the registration as a volunteer, in some cases, really daunting or laborious. And we've just shortened it down, and we've allowed regions to include those other boxes like shirt sizes as an option if that's what they want for their user experience. So we're trying to give regions a lot more flexibility to custom design how the volunteers register through the process while maintaining the minimum requirements necessary as the standard framework. So once the volunteer goes in through Blue Sombrero and registers, after they hit the e-sign, that's where the screening process happens. And that goes from one platform being Blue Sombrero, owned by Dick's, and then it's a handoff of information to our other trusted partner, Verified Volunteers. And Verified Volunteers, they're the ones that take care of the screening process. And we'll explain how that's going to look and feel in the next couple of slides here. But I want to also just emphasize and take a moment to explain that, keep in mind, we're keeping our eye on the volunteer membership program. And one of the things that is essential to that is the AYSO University. And this membership process is going to give immediate access to all of the training, videos, webinars, and training manuals to the volunteer as part of that membership fee, and for no additional charge. Right now, regions have to pay with coupons to, for all the manuals and things like that. That entire system is going away and is being replaced by the volunteer membership program. So all training is going in AYSO University is going to be free to all volunteer members. The other thing that I mentioned a little bit earlier, and I want to reiterate, is we're trying to give regions as much flexibility as possible to customize the experience that they want for their communities. And so we've listened to a lot of the different options, and this initial rollout is essentially the most basic rollout that we could conceive that would give us expected results for the least amount of financial impact, and hopefully the least amount of impact to everyone once this goes live. There are other options that are on the table, and hopefully some of you may have some ideas, and we encourage those as part of the question and answer forum. And also in the future, any ideas that come up as we go through this experience, we want to hear from the membership to improve upon this overall experience. Because remember, we're all volunteers, and so this impacts every one of us. So considering the verified volunteer registration process, it happens in 4 steps. As I explained, you have the volunteer process through Blue Sombrero. After the e-sign happens, Blue Sombrero instantly communicates to Verified Volunteer, who instantly sends you an invitation saying, hey, we noticed that you just completed your Blue Sombrero. We want you to now finish the Verified Volunteer part. And it's as quick as doing a password request. Once you give your information to Verified Volunteers, and something you need to understand is when you go to Verified Volunteers, it is your account. This has nothing to do with AYSO. This is an account relationship between the volunteer and verified volunteer. So there's going to be a username and password set up that's known only to you. Your background check record and how you use it is going to be between you, Verified Volunteers, and any other organizations, including AYSO. It's yours. It's portable. It's your relationship. So it's kind of really important to understand what Verified Volunteers means to everyone who's going to be involved with this. It's their personal background check portal, if you will. And then once they sign out all the information, there's going to be a payment process, which we're going to discuss, that completes the order. And once the payment process has been initiated and confirmed, the Verified Volunteers goes to work doing the screening background verification, and they send a record to the individual within the Verified Volunteer portal. That's the individual's record to, as I said, do whatever they want to do with. They're also going to send a record to AYSO, who will verify that record and send it over to the Blue Sombrero people so that you all can start assigning roles and responsibilities to a now cleared and vetted and approved AYSO volunteer. So four quick steps. So this is what the screen's going to look like. It's going to be the invitation screen after you've completed your Blue Sombrero piece in the e-sign. What's going to happen is you're going to receive a quick email that says, hey, we see that you completed this. We're inviting you now to start your background check piece. You're going to order the background check. You're going to get this verified screen, put in very brief information. And what this is doing is it's literally saying, is this you? And you're going to say, yep, this is me. It's going to go over to Blue Sombrero and say, is this the person we were expecting? Blue Sombrero is going to say, yep, that's the person we were expecting. And you're going to say, great. So as soon as you hit that confirm, all of that stuff happens. And you're going to be brought to the verified volunteer login screen. This is where you're going to create your personal relationship with verified volunteers. You're going to put in the information. And again, these are screenshots that you'll be seeing when you go through this process. Basic information. As soon as you hit confirm, it's going to bring you to the sign and disclosure. This is what is the permission slip, essentially, that says, I agree that it's okay for verified volunteers to do the level 2 background check on behalf of AYSO, and they'll, and AYSO will receive a copy of it and all that kind of stuff. Once you confirm and agree to this, the next step is the payment process. And really important to understand is that there's two options. One is the volunteer continues on the process and pays on their own. They put, through a credit card, they pull their credit card out, and I'll show what those screens look like, but they pay their membership fee. And as a region, area second, you choose to reimburse them or not. That's part of your freedom of how you're going to go about this. This gives you the most control because you will be able to reimburse only those that you choose, and they have to come to you and say, hey, I signed up and I'd like to participate with AYSO. And you say, yeah, come on in. And they may ask, do you reimburse? And if you do, you write them a reimbursement check. If they don't, then you say, no, we don't, and thank you for volunteering, and we'd love to have you, continue participating with us. The other option is if the region makes a decision to pay for all volunteers that register through Blue Sombrero. And this sets up a little bit more risk, because what this does is this opens you up to the world, which is not a bad thing, because we're always, the one thing we hear everywhere we go is we don't have enough volunteers. So everyone who signs up to volunteer through Blue Sombrero will be background screened if you choose this option, and the region will be purchasing that volunteer membership fee on behalf of the volunteer. In order to do that, it's extremely important to know that none of this can happen without the AYSO purchasing card. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a second, but this is one of two things that you must have in place once you make the decision that you're going to pay on behalf of the volunteer. The other thing to understand and recognize is that some volunteers may have multiple roles. They may volunteer for several regions, like a referee. A referee might have several different regions that they go and conduct games. Other volunteers like myself, I'm a National Board of Director volunteer, and I register there, but I also am a member of my section staff. So I also have to register with the section staff. And if I'm going to participate as a coach or a referee in a region, I would have to enroll, participate there as well. What you need to understand is the background check and that fee is only going to occur once. So no matter how many different roles you have in as many different places, only the first place you register is going to carry is going to cover that fee. So hopefully that answers a common question that we were getting earlier, which is if I volunteer for more than one role, do I have to pay more than once? The answer is no, only once each year that you volunteer. So the other setting that's really important is when you set up your season. So as you're getting ready to set up your MY 2019 season, you're going to see a new option. Remember, this screen is not what you're going to see if you were to log in right now. This is what's going to happen when it goes live on April 3rd. And you're going to see this option that says the region to pay volunteer membership program. By default, it's blank. What that means is by default, all volunteers are going to pay for their own. The moment you check this box, you've made the decision that you will pay the $25 membership fee out of the region, your regional bank account. In order for that transaction to happen out of your AYSO regional bank account, you have to have the purchasing card. You cannot pay for volunteers without that purchasing card. So once you've established that you're going to pay and you've clicked that in blue sombrero and set up, you must ensure that you get the purchasing card in place. If you don't, the volunteer is still, because somebody's going to still look for, hey, who's paying? And if we don't see a method of payment, the volunteer is still going to have to pay. So how do you get the card if you don't already have it? Pretty simple. First, you need to understand that only the executive members can request the card. So only a regional commissioner, area director, or section director can make this request. It's a pretty simple request. You're going to use the commercial card at ayso.org email address, and you're going to simply just make the request and say, hey, I need this card thing. How do I get one? They will be sending you a form in response, and then you'll complete it as I'm going to show you in a second, and you'll be well on your way. A couple of things to understand about the card. First, it's not a credit card. It's a purchasing card linked to your region's bank account or your area's bank account or whatever, registration level I'm speaking to here. But it's a financial tool that's recognized by verified volunteers universally. So basically what's happening is you're going to ask for this purchasing card if you don't already have it. It's going to be linked to your bank account, and it is going to be, oops, that's interesting. There we go. It's going to be linked to the NAP Online system so that it gives the benefits of coding everything properly. And it is also a ACH withdrawal. So on the 8th of every month, it's going to be a batch withdrawal. So as your volunteers are registering and going through this process, they're just going to keep getting batched. And then on the 8th of every month, there's going to be a withdrawal out of your bank account for the number of volunteers that have occurred between the last withdrawal. So what's really important to know about that is you need to make sure that you've got money in the bank to cover in anticipation of that withdrawal. The other thing that's important to know is you don't have to change bank accounts. It's simply a financial tool, this purchasing card. Because it's linked to your bank account, it's the same as if you were to use your ATM card, if you will. But as we all know, we're not allowed to use ATM cards from the region. That's the purpose of the card. So after you've requested through commercial card at ayso.org the application, you're going to receive the application that looks like this. And there's a couple of things that you need to know. First, read and understand the agreement itself, so that you understand exactly what this card is about. Second, as you fill it out, the bank address is really, really important. And that bank address is the bank address of the branch that you're using, not the bank, the headquarters of the bank or anything like that. It's the branch address where your account is. So if you don't put that address in, it's going to delay the application process. So really important that you get the correct bank address. Sign and return it back to commercialcard@ayso.org. And if you see a theme here, all correspondence and everything around this card, this is a really good email address for you to be using. Here's the important part. This is part of the planning of opening your season. You need to use 3 to 4 weeks to receive this card. Again, if you don't already have it, this card has been around for a little while now. And if you haven't come up to speed to adopt and use it for the other vendor applications, then now's a great opportunity to go get it. And one of the things that we're concerned about is there still has been a very low adoption rate. So for whatever reason, a lot of regions still have not applied for the card to put it in place for regional purchasing. And that might become a problem in a couple, once we start ramping up and more and more people are opening seasons, because it's literally going to create an administrative bottleneck. We've tried to get ahead of it the last 6 months, but everyone's kind of dragging their feet. So what I've been told by the national office at this point, it's possible that it could almost take up to 5 weeks to get the card. So if you're going to open your season 5 weeks from now and you're going to pay for the volunteers, you got to have that card in place, because you will not be able to pay for the volunteers until you have the card. Well, I mean, you can do the reimbursement process, but this option is just one of those options to go around that. So anyways, this is what the payment screen is going to look like for the volunteer when the region pays. In the area that's got the red arrow, it's going to show that, hey, the $25 has already been paid for. And all you're going to need to do is go through and click and continue through the process. But what's really cool about Verified Volunteers payment process is they've discovered, as a merchant and in a business on their own, is that there's a lot of volunteers that actually don't mind contributing, if not paying for their own processing fee. So Verified Volunteers, even though the region has decided to pay, Verified Volunteers still gives them the option to pay a certain amount. And my understanding is there is no cap on this amount. So this is actually a donation portal in some ways, that people that wish to contribute more than they're obligated to, this is a vessel for them to do it. And if they choose to participate by paying a certain portion, they just put in their credit card information, hit complete, and the region will only be responsible for the difference. The other thing that you'll notice is this area that I put an X over, and it's called Sign Up for the Fast Pass. This is an area that is not recognized by AYSO at this point. It's a service that Verified Volunteer has as a company. And if you remember, I said this is a private portal between the volunteer and Verified Volunteers. So as of right now, there's no way for us to remove this, because it's a product feature that Verified Volunteers is trying to sell and market, and is an additional $4. A region that is paying for their volunteers, if the volunteer chooses this option, the region will not pay that additional $4. The region is only responsible for the $25 that we've established. And the Fast Pass, it's not something, like I said, it's not something AYSO supports at this time. If you want more information, you can go to Verified Volunteers website, look at what the Fast Pass is. We are looking at it. We're just trying to figure out how to make it or determine whether or not it's an efficient, it's something that we want to endeavor with. If the volunteer is going to pay on their own, it's a very straightforward screen that they get. They come to this screen. They have the same option to sign up for the Fast Pass. Again, AYSO does not endorse, recommend, or otherwise participate with this. So that's going to be up to the user and what they want to do. They hit continue. They go through the payment process, and they're all set, and they're done. Once that payment's been done, that's the initiation where the screening commences. Typically, it's 24 to 72 hours. These are business days, by the way. It's something I forget to mention often. So if this occurs on a Saturday, it's not 24 to 72 hours, including Sunday. These are, these background screenings. They're going into databases, and they're contacting through county methods that are during normal business hours. So that's just something to keep in mind. But regardless, Verified Volunteer says that the typical volunteer has a 24 to 72 expectation to receive their background record. Very important to know that it could take longer if the person has a complicated history. And a complicated history is not necessarily a bad history. It's just one that maybe they've moved a lot. Maybe maybe there's something, an alias, or maybe they've been hit with identity fraud and things like that, and someone else is using their account. So just because someone is taking a long time, or maybe their system is getting flagged, it's going to go through the AYSO and the CVPA process to adjudicate and make sure that the person is who they say they are, and that their records really are meeting the standards of AYSO. So this screen is meant to kind of show what is the potential impact if a region just says we're going to pay on behalf of our volunteers. What's that going to do to our registration fee? A 4-to-1 ratio. This is 4 players to every one volunteer. That is a ideal goal that AYSO likes to see accomplished within all regions. The reality is it's typically a much higher player to volunteer ratio. And so to use this as a benchmark, if you've got more players than a 4-to-1 ratio, then it's going to be a less than $6.25 impact to your organization. What we're kind of expecting is that most regions are going to see probably somewhere between a $3 to $5 impact to the registration fee if they're going to pay on behalf of their volunteers. And it's pretty simple. If you look at your general history, past performance, if you know how many players you typically have and how many volunteers that you have, it's just your basic math equation to determine what that impact's going to be. So the other thing that's evolved as we've gone through this process is a couple of options. Now, again, these are options that we've implemented because they were easy options to implement, and they were things that we knew we could get ahead of to try to prohibit regions from getting incurring costs that they didn't otherwise want. One of them is a list. It's called the no acceptance list. This doesn't apply to all regions, but occasionally there are people that you don't want back. You know who they are. They're just not working out for your region. And so you just don't want them to volunteer anymore with you. If you're choosing to pay for all volunteers and this person decides to register to volunteer for your region, there's nothing stopping them from doing that because you've opened up the region to all volunteers or any person wishing to volunteer, and those people will go through the process we just showed. So you'd be hit with a $25 fee, for someone that you don't want to use, that you know that you didn't want to use. So what we did is we've created this process, and it's the no acceptance list. What you're going to do is you're going to send an email, and I'll show you what that what the email should look like. But you're going to send an email to cvpa@ayso.org, and you want to do that about 2 weeks prior to opening up your season. Send them the list of the people that you don't want volunteering in your region, and they will upload that, and that's going to become like a speed bump between the communication of Blue Sombrero to verified volunteers. And a person still might go through the Blue Sombrero process, but Blue Sombrero is going to check that list. And if they see that person on that list, they're not going to forward it to verified volunteers. So it's a short circuit. And that way, you're not going to be imposing a cost upon the region for somebody that you have no intention, that you know ahead of time you're not going to use. So therefore, this is one way that we were trying to figure out how can we make it easier on regions to not be punitively damaged or penalized, if you will. So a little bit of work on your end to identify who those people are. Really important that you communicate with those people. That's not our job. Our job is just to try to make sure that they don't go through the process. Your job is to let them know that you don't want them. And just because you don't want them doesn't mean they're not eligible to volunteer elsewhere if they've got a clear screen. So you're not prohibiting them from volunteering in AYSO. You're just preemptively prohibiting them from volunteering within your region. Again, this isn't for everybody, but it is an option for those that this applies to. The other option that we recognized is that for some organizations, you don't want to open up yourself to all people. You want to have a little bit more control, so you're not going to click the box in Blue Sombrero. You're going to insist that the volunteers that apply go through the full process. They're going to pay up front, and then you're going to reimburse them. Well, there were some regions that said that would mean that we're going to have to write 500, 600, 700, 800 reimbursement checks. We don't want to do that. So what we determined is that we could actually use the player registration coupon service that I think it's in Blue Sombrero. Is that correct, Al? I know you're on mute, but
I'm sorry, I'm on mute. Yeah.
So that's Blue Sombrero, right? Where the coupon is applied.
Yes, exactly.
Okay,
it's the Blue Sombrero play registration portion.
Thanks. So essentially, instead of writing and this obviously is going to apply only to the volunteers who have children in the program, but what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to kind of ask them to register as a volunteer first. When they go through the process, you'll see them show up as you assign them a role and responsibility in Blue Sombrero, and send them coupon to get a $25 discount off the player registration fee. Essentially, you're reimbursing them and using that method instead of writing a check. Again, this isn't going to apply to everybody, especially those like myself who don't have children in the program anymore, but it is an option available for some of those regions that are really concerned about writing so many reimbursement checks. And of course, we've got a lot of other options that we're listening to, and we're already building a database and trying to determine, what options can we endeavor to make this a better experience for everybody next year. So going back to that non-acceptance list for a second, this is literally all you need to do. You're going to just send an email to cvpa@ayso.org. In the subject line, you're going to put your region and non-acceptance list. So that's how they're going to identify when they get it on the other side. Oh, this is important. We need to get this into the database. You need to make sure, this is your responsibility now. You need to make sure that you have their last name, their first name, and their AYSO ID, because we don't know who they are. Nobody else knows who they are. Only you do. So if you give us those 3 pieces of information, we'll be able to put the speed bump in place. So again, the person will get through Blue Sombrero, but it won't go to verified volunteers once Blue Sombrero checks this list. So to recap, the purchasing card, commercial card at ayso.org, really important. If you have any further questions after this presentation, questions at ayso.org, great place, great resource, and you will be responded to in kind. Questions in regards to Blue Sombrero or AYSO University, use the support at ayso.org. That non-acceptance list that we just talked about goes to the CVPA at ayso.org. And a really valuable resource is AYSOvolunteers.org. This is, if you haven't gone there yet, I encourage you, go there tonight, stay up late, surf all around it, and see the wonders of what this site is. It's really geared quite well. It's evolving. It's just a great resource for all of us as volunteers to get a lot of different information, in most cases pretty quickly within a couple of clicks. What it looks like is you go to the www.aysovolunteers.org, and this will be your welcome page. So this is how you know that you got there. It's going to have the volunteer resources. The reason why I'm showing you this is because many of you want a copy of this presentation, and you'd like more information about the volunteer membership program through the FAQs and things like that. So all you need to do is go to this website, in the search box, type in volunteer membership program, hit search, and it should bring you right to this. This is a screenshot I took the other day. And so the first box is where you're going to find your FAQs. The second is going to bring up the presentation that you're seeing right now. So with that, I'd like to go into the question and answer portion of the presentation. And Al, this is where he shines, and he'll start reading any of your questions.
You're too nice, Randy. There's only 3 questions, actually 2 questions.
Fantastic.
And I think you've answered the first one, just to make sure. It's from Rebecca. So if we as a region decide to cover the fee, are we able to choose who we pay for?
No, when you say you choose to cover the fee, yes, you do. But how you choose to do it is really, I think, what your question is. So yeah. I think what you're asking is, as a region, if you click the box in the Blue Sombrero setup that says we're going to pay for all of our volunteers, then you're going to pay for everybody who goes through the Blue Sombrero registration process, because you've opened yourself up to anyone and everyone who wants to come and volunteer for your program. The way you would control that with the most control is through a reimbursement process by only reimbursing those people who have paid themselves. So I would advise you not to check that box. And when someone comes to you and says, hey, I registered, here's my receipt, you get a choice at that point to say yes or no.
Okay. The other question is, does the free access, in quotes, to AYSO start by date, i.e. April 3rd, or start by membership year, MY19?
Al, I know you like to answer this.
Yeah, I love this one. Yeah, actually, it starts on April 3rd. To make the change to go by membership year 18 or 19, and much too complicated for the reality of don't be that many people from MY19 18 taking the courses. So beginning April 3rd, the course will be included in AYSO.
So the moment someone signs up,
yep,
that's independent from the screening, right?
Correct.
So the moment someone signs up, they've got access to AYSO University.
Right. Correct. And then Denise asks if you can give the explanation of what the Fast Pass is again.
I can't really, because the Fast Pass is not something that we're promoting or participating in. But a little bit of the research, we are doing background research, obviously. It's a product that Verified Volunteer is promoting. It's their product. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to allow you to make your background screening available to anyone else that you may volunteer to. So like, I know many, like myself, I used to volunteer to First Robotics, softball, basketball, all those different, and every one of them had screening requirements. And so Verified Volunteers is trying to give you the ability to send your background check to those different organizations if they accept it.
Right.
That's about all I know about it at this point.
Yeah, at this point, it's pretty much a one-way thing. They have that feature. AYSO is not accepting anybody's fast pass coming into AYSO, but because it's your background check, as Randy pointed out, you're welcome to use it on anybody else's background check if they accept the same thing. And you're welcome. She said thank you in the question.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Fantastic.
Mike Trout's salary this morning, is that a question for anybody? No. Maybe he can sponsor this. Maybe he can pay for everybody's background check. He's got the money now.
Well, that's actually, you bring up an interesting point there, Al, and I'd like to share with people is one of the ways to help contribute to this volunteer membership program fee is to go back to your community and find out what organizations that would be willing to support this screening process to keep their community safe. These might be organizations that could care less about anything around sports, but they might have actually money that they're looking to give to organizations that are trying to keep their membership safe. The other is many of you have regions in smaller rural areas where you're the only soccer program in town and you've replaced the rec program. I highly encourage you to go back to the town and say, hey, look, we've all got skin in the game and this is keeping our community safe. Is there a way that the rec department could contribute to this? Seeing as we've carried the rec department's obligation by carrying the program. So there are other ways that you can get this funded instead of, not just through player registrations. And I encourage all of you to try to, figure out how does this work? And, we're looking, we're going to look throughout the year to see who solves this the best way and then share the best practices. So any other questions?
Well done, Randy. I think we're done.
All right, well, I thank everybody for participating, and I thank you very much for volunteering, and I bid you all good evening.
Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Good night.